weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum braucht er was zum Essen, bitte sehr. Es macht ihn ein Geschwätz nicht satt, das schafft kein Essen her.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeit einmeinst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Mensch ein Mensch ist, drum hat der Stiefel im Gesicht nicht gern. Er will unter sich keinen Sklaven sehen und über sich keinen Herrn.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeiter einmeinst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Und weil der Prolet ein Prolet ist, drum wird ihn kein anderer befreien. Es kann die Befreiung der Arbeiter nur das Werk der Arbeiter sein.
Drum links, zwei, drei, drum links, zwei, drei, wo dein Platz genossen ist, weil ich ein in die Arbeiter einmeinst und weil du auch ein Arbeiter bist.
Здравствуйте, comrades. Welcome to a special live edition of Socialism, Socialism Live, Socialism Sunday, if you will. Well, you guys know that this is the wonderful, bustling month of Red May. Red May is a group of socialists out in Seattle, and every year during the month of May, they grace us, and I do actually mean that, they grace us with all sorts of live socialism streams. And, you know, if they're going to make the content, we may as well take advantage of the fact that they're making the content and partake of some live socialism fun time. Now, today, I'm actually really looking forward to the presentation that we're watching today, which is scheduled to start live in about 11 minutes. I should actually pin this to the top of the chat, but hang on, let me here is the stream we're watching. If you choose to go to the chat, don't be disruptive. To engage in their chat, don't be disruptive. Ask good questions that are on topic and be polite. All right, now I've got oh, I can't. It's too long of a hang on. There we go. Now the link is in the chat. I'll pin that to the top of the page. Remove pinned tweet. There you go. Because here's the thing, guys. When we do watch Socialism Live, I will not only have the presentation on the stream, I will also have the chat on the stream. And I would strongly prefer, Murphy's Pool, to your point, I would strongly prefer there to be no shitposting. I would. And the reason for that is that they're going to insult us. They're going to lie about us. They're probably going to smear me several times over. And I just don't want to stoop to their level. I want to be a level above. I want us to ask good, solid questions that relate to the programming. And today I might have some questions. Why, thank you, Socialist Autumn, for the compliment. I do appreciate that, because I am a woman of a certain age. I just celebrated my 12th, 29th birthday, something like that. And today on Red May, they are talking about Marxism and the oppression of women at 40. And apparently, the only thing that can save me from being oppressed is Marxism. And so I put on my best socialist hat, I'm wearing my red shirt. I'm all ready to go and learn about how Marxism can save me from being an oppressed woman of a certain age. I think it's going to be great. Let's see the description. Lisa Vogel revisits classical Marxian texts, tracking analyses of the women question in socialist theory and drawing on central theoretical categories of Marxist capital to open up an original theorization of gender and the social production and reproduction of material life. Might we be getting into some queer Marxism today? Might we be getting into some abolish the family today? I think that we might be. I guess we'll have to find out. We have Kristen on the panel, who is an assistant professor of political science at the University of Texas. I think we may have seen Kristen before. I'm reasonably positive that this is not going to be Kristen's first appearance on Socialism, but congratulations, Texas. You have someone in the game today. We have Paula, who is an activist and scholar from Argentina, a professor of sociology and political science at the University of Buenos Aires. So good for her. We have Melda, who worked as an electrical and electronics engineer for about 10 years and then studied economics and completed a PhD in developmental economics. And it looks like she is in Turkey. So that'll be an interesting perspective. And then we have Sarah, who is the associate professor emeritus at the Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada. We've got Marxists from all over the world today. Isn't this going to be fun? So, guys, that's what we have on the docket. We're going to be watching this live presentation from Red May, all about Marxism and the oppression of women at 40. And again, I do want to say, and I'll probably remind you a couple more times, I do not want to see shit posting from my community in their chat. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see anyone go over there. Excuse me. I don't want to see anyone go over there and say, why are you engaging in capitalism if you're Marxist? Because we know the reason for that. We've talked about the reason for that. They think that they have to engage in capitalism in order to survive within the oppressive system of the capitalist. And so they allow themselves to. It's literally in the Communist Manifesto. What I'm saying, guys, is that we do like advanced socialism on this channel. I don't want any like beginner level mistakes, because it just makes us look foolish. It makes us look like we're not doing our homework. It makes us look like we're not paying attention when we sit for hours every single week watching these presentations. They're not rules. I can't control you. So if you want to go and shit post in the chat, you are perfectly capable of doing it. I'm not an authoritarian. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I would prefer if people didn't. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it makes us look good. I don't think it's actually helpful to what we're trying to do. If you're going to post in their chat, I want you to post thoughtful, rational questions based on the content of the presentation. And listen, yesterday, I actually had a surprising interaction with the socialist because we did Socialism Live yesterday. We watched a very advanced economics workshop given by Cordelia. And I was asking questions in the chat, and I asked a very simple question. Who decides what people in society need under your socialist system? And what if the people disagree with that assessment? And I was perfectly polite. They lied about me. They smeared me. They insulted me. But I was perfectly polite. I just kept asking my question. Guess what happened after the presentation? Cordelia DM'd me and said, I'm really sorry I didn't get a chance to answer your question. And then she gave me all sorts of information. And then she said she would come on the channel and have a talk with us. So we can actually we can actually communicate with the socialist when we're not shit posting. No, I am not banning people from my chat, Autumn, that are not breaking the rules in my chat. Don't try to be a subversive. Oftentimes when people are banned in Red May's chat, they're not doing anything wrong. So, guys, just rein it in. That's all I'm asking. All right, we have about 4 minutes before we're about to begin, so I just want to do a couple quick announcements. Number one, we have movie night tonight. Movie night is in the supporter Discord. We are watching, hang on, I need you to actually see the window that I'm showing you. There we go. We are watching the classic THX 1138. I've never seen it, or I've never seen it all the way through. I've seen part of it. So I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be at 8 p.m. in the supporter Discord. How do you get to the supporter Discord, you ask? Well, I'm glad you did. Later today, I will be posting links to everyone supporting my work with a monthly or annual contribution on this here YouTube channel. If you are a channel member, you will get access to the supporter Discord. If you are in my locals community as a supporter, you will get access to the supporter Discord. If you are on my Patreon, you will get access to the supporter Discord. But the place that I would really like your support more than any other is going to be on my main Substack, Karlyn, Karlyn, .substack.com. That's not what that should look like. That's what that should look like. So I just posted an article about how Tim Pool doesn't know what he's talking about last night. And when you become a paying supporter of my work on Substack, $5 a month, $50 a year, you get access to all sorts of perks, to include 2 Zoom calls with me every single week, to include movie night in the supporter Discord, to include writers group, to include sometimes some other perks that we do throughout the month. So if you want to join us for movie night tonight, I will be posting right after our stream today a newsletter that looks just like this on the Substack. It's called the Unwoke Roundup. And at the bottom of that newsletter, there will be a link to your community Zooms for the week and also to the supporter Discord. So all of your supporter perks in Substack come in this newsletter right here. Please make sure you avail yourself of them. We do movie night every Sunday at 8 p.m. So even if you don't want to join us for this movie night, you can join us for next week. Maybe we'll be watching something more your speed next week, but I definitely encourage you to join. We watch a lot of great movies. We do trivia. We talk about the movies. We talk about what they mean in the world. Sometimes we just watch nice movies just to take a little bit of a break. This one I think is going to be a little bit more of a dystopian movie, which certainly fits in what we're doing today. And I'll look forward to seeing everyone in the supporter Discord at 8 p.m. tonight for that. And of course, we're doing Socialism Bingo today. Let me get that bingo card up and running. There's your Socialism Bingo card in the chat. Go ahead and click Generate Card. Everyone's card is unique. If you have solidarity on your card twice, that's equity in action, folks. Also because I refuse to fix the bingo card. We're going for lines or we're going for corners. When you get a bingo, shout out bingo in the chat. You don't win anything, but you will get a hearty round of applause, and it'll keep you focused and on what is going on. Also, as a reminder, I do have my merch store, which is unwokeart.com. Unwoke Art is the home of the special Socialism Saturday t-shirt with Join the Cult on it. It is also the home of the Be Bourgeois Fox, the fox that is engaging in capitalism with a dry sense of humor, of course. And for a limited time only, the Golden Trump is flying off the shelf. They really are. I processed a whole bunch of orders for the Golden Trump this morning. So I do have this special Trump design that I've created with Trump just looking really on his game, really happy after he defeated CNN, after he is still ahead of everyone, even though everyone's trying to target him and bring him down. And so I do have this special Trump design that says, always get the last laugh on it. And we're doing it on a special golden mug, the Golden Trump. It looks great. Come on. You got to find the humor in this. This is for a limited time only in the Unwoke Art store. This is my exclusive merch store where you can not only get cool stuff that you can give as gifts, what have you, or just keep it for yourself. You know you want the Golden Trump as much as anyone. But you can also give them out as gifts and also just keep, it also helps to support the work I'm doing, which I really appreciate. There's your link to the Golden Trump if you would like to partake of that. We've also got it on stickers, magnets, this awesome G-Clay print, and also, of course, on t-shirts. We have all sorts of other awesome designs in the Unwoke Art store as well. So take a look around while you're there and yeah, get yourself some cool stuff. All right, guys, we should be getting started soon. And again, I don't want to see any nonsense. I want everyone to be on their best behavior. Be nice, okay? Please. All right, mount that like button for me, guys. Mounting the like button. We have a huge disparity in people who are watching right now and people who have mounted the like button. So let's mount that like button up, guys. Come on, let's get those are rookie numbers. Let's get those numbers up. Julie says, I bought 2 mugs today. I can't wait for them to arrive. Thank you, Julie. They should be getting right out to you. And take a picture and send it to me when you get it. I can't wait to see it. Guys, mounting that like button lets YouTube know that you're enjoying the stream so far. And it makes YouTube recommend it to more people. Oh, we're seeing emphasize over there. Okay, emphasize, please behave yourself. I hope Philip's modding today. I've got some words for Philip. Cordelia told me she was very disappointed in Red May. Not Red May didn't even give Cordelia the very thoughtful question that I've asked. And Cordelia said, she was like, I was very disappointed that the moderators didn't give me your question. I said, thank you, Cordelia. That's very polite for a socialist. The like button can consent. The like button is an inanimate object. It does not consent or not consent. Jeez. All right, they're saying they're going to get started shortly. Guys, I hope you're having a wonderful Sunday. I just woke up. I'm just having my coffee. Well, I didn't just wake up. It's 2:00 in the afternoon. I woke up several hours ago, but it feels like I just woke up, okay? I woke up and then I laid around for a little while. I laid around for a while and played a game on my phone. Oh, man. Oh, man. Oh, man. Red May is exhausting. I gotta say, I was so excited for Red May. Autumn, I think Trump is hilarious, and though I do not plan to vote for Trump again, I think that Trump is hilarious and his hilarity is undeniable, and so I will make Trump merch when I think that Trump is doing things that are correct. I'm allowed to sell merch with whatever I want on it, Autumn. Your socialist regime hasn't taken over yet. Yes, Nick is... Hang on. That's not what I meant to click on. Nick is saying, I'm asking everyone to not shitpost. We can't tell you what to do. But oftentimes, if you just let them talk, they tell us what they really think. Well, then you don't have to buy it, Autumn, but other people are buying it and enjoying it, and why are you trying to ruin the fun for everyone? No one's forcing you to buy anything. Like, that's how capitalism works, Autumn. Like, and this is exactly the point. If I was in charge of deciding what people needed, I would say everyone needs a golden Trump mug. Okay? That's why you don't want a single person in charge of deciding what the community needs. And if you were in charge of deciding what the community needed, you would say that no one needs a golden Trump mug, while some people would disagree with that. This is why we believe in individualism. I get to make decisions for me. You get to make decisions for you. That's how it works. All right, guys, we're getting started. Hello, Red May.
Hey, everybody.
Hello,
Welcome to Red May
not
2023.
Philip.
Thanks again for tuning in with us today. We have a great event, Lee's Vocals, Marxism, and the Oppression of Women
I don't
at
care
40.
what people think.
Just a quick
I have
announcement
fans
before
on
we
all
start.
different sides of
Our
the
upcoming
political
event
aisle.
today,
I don't care.
Capitalist Zone Defense, is unfortunately going to have to be rescheduled. So please check our website for updates. We'll be updating social media as well for when that will be rescheduled. Our full schedule and list of events for this month is available at redmayseattle.org. And if you would like to support our work so that we continue to do this year round and through the rest of the month and many other years to come,
capitalism
please consider
already.
becoming a patron on our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/redmayseattle. As far as other events coming up, we have the legal crisis in Chile, which is happening Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time with Gerardo Munoz, Rodrigo Carmi, and Alejandro Castillo. We also have a couple of live events happening this coming week. So if you're in Seattle on May 25th, Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, we will be with Cedric Johnson talking about his new book, After Black Lives Matter. And then the following day on May 26th, Friday at 5 p.m. at Vermilion, we will be having a talk called Pro Sports, Urban Politics, and the Left with Jules Boykoff, Cedric Johnson, and Jesse Hagopian. So for today, I'm going to be introducing our speakers. Very excited for this talk. The first speaker for today is Kristen Munro, who is an assistant professor of political science at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. Her book, The Production of Everyday Life in Eco-Conscious Households, Compromise, Conflict, and Complicity, was released this March by University of Bristol Press. We have Sue Ferguson, who's an assistant professor emeritus at Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada, teaching youth and children's studies in digital media and journalism. We have Paula Varela, who's an activist and scholar from Argentina. She is a professor of sociology and political science at the Universidad de Buenos Aires and senior researcher at the National Scientific
Autumn,
and
this is
Technical Research
unhinged,
Council.
and we're trying
She's
to
the
focus
editor
on the
of the book,
presentation.
Mujeres
This is unhinged, though.
Trabajadoras,
This
Puente
is
entre la
unhinged from reality.
producción y la reproducción, working class women, bridge between production and reproduction. And last but not least, we have Melda who's worked as an electrical and electronics engineer for about 10 years and then studied economics and completed her PhD in development economics. In 2016, while working as an associate professor of economics at the university, she was expelled for signing a peace declaration. Since that time, she has been working as an independent researcher.
Why do I
Her chief
question that?
research areas are political economy and female labor. She is a co-author of the books Pathway from the Grundrisse to Capital and The Miracle of Commodities, which are both in Turkish. Recently, she collected her articles on female labor into a book titled Producing Life Toward a Holistic Feminist Theory. And also to mention that Cinzia Aruza, who is supposed to be on this panel today, is sick and unfortunately cannot make it. But we have 4 wonderful panelists who will take it away from here. So thank you all, and I'm looking forward to this event quite a lot.
Who's starting? Is anyone starting?
All right, so maybe I'll begin. Thank you very much to everyone who's attending, and especially to my co-panelists.
Is she frozen?
It's great to be with you.
Socialists suck at technology.
So I was born in 1983, which is the same year that Lisa Vogel's book, Marxism and the Oppression of Women Toward a Unitary Theory, was first published by Rutgers University Press.
She's 2 years younger than me.
And I'm part of the generation of scholars whose work has benefited immensely from the new edition of Marxism and the Oppression of Women that was published in 2013. Can you guys please
reassure me that I don't look
so old? As a brief aside, I think some special thanks are due today to David McNally and my co-panelist Sue Ferguson, who I understand were instrumental in bringing this important book back into print. An impressive number of current and in-progress translations into Turkish, Chinese, German,
I'm starting
French,
to have I'm having a midlife crisis
Portuguese,
on the stream right
Spanish,
now.
and Korean mean that even more people will be able to draw on Marxism and the oppression of women in the future. I feel so lucky to be here with an international panel of brilliant feminist scholars who come from a number of different scholarly disciplines and Marxist perspectives, and who exemplify just a fraction of the wide-ranging worldwide influence of this book on contemporary Marxist thought. While we're marking the 40th anniversary of its publication, Vogel herself points out in the introduction to the book that it represents over a decade of her intellectual work. And if you'll humor me with another aside, I think this is an important reminder to university administrators and politicians who are removing tenure protections, imposing austerity measures and annual publishing targets, while at the same time increasing faculty teaching and service workloads, that groundbreaking work takes time and effort to develop. Vogel writes that sections of Marxism and the Oppression of Women trace the evolution in her work over a period of study starting in the early 1970s. First, her assessment of socialist feminist theorizing of the time, then a novel and meticulous analysis of 19th century texts on the woman question, and finally, her original political economic analysis of the role of women in the reproduction of capitalist society as a whole. Each of these sections stand on their own as influential contributions to Marxist feminist thought and continue to be referenced and built upon by scholars today in topics such as Black feminism, political ecology, public parks cleaning, disability, chronic illness, childhood, public schooling, homophobia, racial capitalism, adult education, masculinity, and so on. Lisa Vogel's book provides several key insights that have informed my own thinking. Those insights are, number one, that activities outside the formal economy are implicated in capitalist social reproduction.
No, Autumn, it makes us look
by
like we
which
have a
I mean
sense
the
of humor
reproduction of capitalist
and
society
are
as
not
a whole,
unhinged from
and that
reality.
the imperatives
That's
of
what it makes us look
accumulation
like.
shape our everyday lives. Number two, that the reproduction of the commodity labor power takes place both within and outside the family household by both waged and unwaged workers. Number three, that the working class is not homogeneous, but that oppression related to gender, race, age, nationality, sexuality, disability, and other group characteristics in capitalist society can be understood as having a material basis. However, the origins and precise sources of these oppressions are not the same, and their specific manifestations and evolutions can be productively investigated historically. Number four, that there's room in Marx's critique of political economy for a theory of the role of gender in capitalist society, and the best, or at least a very good, path forward for such a theory involves a careful study and application of Marx. And number five, that shedding light on the problems of working class women can shed light on the problems of the working class as a whole and the reproduction of capitalist society as a whole, ultimately generating knowledge that ought to be of interest to people of any gender who are concerned with the liberation of everyone.
Thank you,
However, as
Thank
influential
you.
as Marxism and the oppression of women has been,
I appreciate
I've
you
observed
all.
that these five crucial insights are often either absent from or insufficiently developed in much of current Marxist feminist theorizing. And the stakes, theoretical context, and intricacies of the debates that animated the development of Marxist feminist theory in the mid to late 20th century, for example, over the nature of value production in capitalism, over the multiple meanings of the term reproduction, and over unitary or dual theories.
You guys are actually
of
the ones that have created the
women's
multiple
oppression in
meanings of the
capitalist
term
society
reproduction. That's
are
not the
generally
capitalists,
lost
that's
on
you.
younger scholars, and I'm including myself here for some self-criticism. So I'm not by any means suggesting that anyone involved in these decades-old debates got anything perfectly right. In fact, I think a lot of what was written during these debates involves assertions and interpretations that would make a contemporary Marx scholar or feminist theorist frankly cringe. But there is, after all, a very important word in the subtitle of Marxism and the Oppression of Women that captures how the development of ideas takes place toward a unitary theory. From what I've observed reading new work, younger scholars, and again, I am very much counting myself here, have been getting ourselves very confused lately by mistakenly seeing Marxist feminism as a single uniform theoretical framework at worst, and not grasping the nuances and stakes of past debates at best. The temptation is to take bits and pieces one likes from incompatible and contradictory Marxist feminist theoretical perspectives. Based on these observations, it seems to me that future research building on the legacy of Lisa Vogel's Marxism and the Oppression of Women needs to do three things. And I'd like to point out that each of my co-panelists have already made very important scholarly contributions to the projects I'm about to outline. First, following Vogel's own method, Marxist feminist scholars today need to undertake a meticulous analysis of past debates in Marxist feminism. Second, scholarship is needed that develops Marxist feminist theories that draw on more recent developments in Marx scholarship and feminist theorizing. Third, there is a need for careful and systematic Marxist feminist political economy that rigorously demonstrates the relationships between accumulation, the reproduction of capitalist society, and waged and unwaged work, and productive and unproductive labor. Like the subtitle of Marxism and the Oppression of Women, all we can really hope to do as scholars is keep working alongside one another toward better understandings of capitalist society and the forms of oppression inherent to it. And with these better understandings, I think, or at least hope, that we will have a better chance of working together to achieve our collective liberation. Thanks.
Hi, so I think I'm next up. And first of all, thank you very much to Kristen and Kyle and, for inviting me to do this. It's such an honor to be able to say a few words about this very, very important book. And so I'm going to speak mostly from a bit more of a personal angle about it. I was asked to be on this panel. The email from Kristen, I think, came in right while I was reading Sheila Rowbotham's Daring to Hope, My Life in the 1970s. It's a memoir and of being a socialist, a Marxist feminist in Britain in the 1970s. And for people who don't know Sheila Rowbotham's work, she published Women, Resistance and Revolution in 1972, and Hidden from History in 1973, and also Women's Consciousness, Man's World in 1973. So 3 really important books that were important to the English language
Sue is the Canadian professor
milieu. And the memoirs talks about how she worked through these this whole set of questions that were being thrown up by the struggle, and in the midst of this then still burgeoning and vibrant and very diverse feminist movement. And it's sort of interesting to read through how she talks about the fluidity of the ideas and practices, and that feminists of all ilks were dealing with, and this sort of ethos of experimentation, and not really having much, things were still very fluid. And then she tracks how over the course of the 1970s, that begins to change, and you get this hardening of positions within feminism. And in particular, the ones that come out that are most relevant to us is the distinction between a radical feminist position and a socialist feminist position. And so these positions hardened so much, and the debates were so rancorous that by 1978, no longer could they were feminists in Britain willing to come together under a national women's liberation movement conference. So they had a bunch of these conferences from the 1970 on, where everybody was sort of coming together and working through ideas. By 1978, that was the last one. People were were not thinking they could work together anymore. And so, of course, the big distinction, and the way Rowbotham talks about it, was that radical feminists tended to explain women's oppression in biological terms about men's power over women, often gave very trans-historical explanations that ignored or failed to factor in the effect of capitalist exploitation on women. Socialist feminists were, meanwhile, trying to do just that. They were usually drawing on Frederick Engels's comments in The Origins of Family and Private Property in the State,
Family,
about
private
the
property in the
two-sided
state,
nature, the
family.
reproduction nature of real life. But, and I won't rehearse here, but this was resulting in a not very robust explanation of how these two, production and reproduction, are related. So in reading Rowbotham's memoir, it just reminded me really of what it was like to be a socialist feminist in the mid-1980s. I'm a little younger than Rowbotham, but so in 1986, I entered grad school at York University in Toronto, and I was doing political science program. And I was
abolish the family right off the bat. Feminism in Marxist terms always leads to abolish the family.
And in that milieu, I encountered this, this array of what seemed to me like very set traditions of a liberal feminist, a socialist feminist, and a radical feminist. And none of them were entirely satisfactory to me, quite honestly. At the same time, the dualist analysis of the dual systems analysis that socialist feminism tended to embrace were also being rejected and bypassed for a postmodern or post-structuralist feminism. Because I was at York, I was able to cling to kind of Marxist-inspired accounts, because people like Meg Luxton were there, and Pat and Hugh Armstrong and Issa Bacher, who all have, kept alive, I guess, a more materialist explanation, and kept on trying to figure out the production-reproduction relationship. but I still didn't feel like they had resolved the dual spheres. In that same year, 1986, I also joined the International Socialist Group in Toronto, which was very formative for me in terms of actually helping me understand what Marxism was about, et cetera. But their position on women's oppression was not very helpful either. And 1984 saw the publication of Tony Cliff's Class Struggle and Women's Liberation, in which he and Tony Cliff was sort of one of the luminaries and of the Socialist Workers' Party in Britain, which was the sister organization of the International Socialists in Toronto. And for Cliff, kind of in this book, puts forward what is really the standard organized left socialist position and interpretation of Engels, and that is that women's oppression is something that's distinct from working class exploitation. Those are two distinct things. And he actually writes in that book that socialist feminists are wrong to try to, quote, bridge the gap between them. He writes, the starting point for a struggle against women's oppression is not that of oppression itself, but the point where working class women are strong, by which he means they are strong in unions and at workplaces because they can exercise their strength by striking. And then he counsels that feminists should not really take on battles that men are not likely to support, such as battles around rape or battered women or wages for housework. But they should instead, they should focus on opposing things that have this sort of more economic side to them, I guess, welfare cuts. They should promote equal pay, they should promote unionization, and they should promote abortion rights, because these are things, these are ways in which it would free up women and to join the labor market and improve their position as workers. So that wasn't terribly helpful to me, as you can imagine, and I was still struggling with it because I could see that there wasn't really a very good explanation anywhere that I looked. But that's at some point, and I can't tell you exactly when, I came across Marxism and the Oppression of Women. I know I didn't encounter it in the academy. I know that nobody in my classes was reading it, and it had been published in 1983. So my guess is by 87, 88, maybe 90, I read it, and I found it on the International Socialist book table. So even though it was not spouting the line that Tony Cliff was promoting, and wasn't endorsed by our sister organization or whatever, there was nonetheless a culture of debate and discussion.
Yes,
in
that would make you bourgeois because they consider your wife and kids, or your kids at least, to be private property.
We read it a bit collectively. We had some discussions about it, and it took me a while to kind of really appreciate exactly how much it answered so many of the questions that I had. But the trouble is that, I could sort of, it was helpful, but the fact that other people in my academic milieu in particular were not picking up on it, and postmodernism was sort of taking over, and there was a move away from questions of class and materialism, and there was, it was very
so postmodernism pulled Marxism off track.
Receded,
isn't that interesting?
even in my life, and it wasn't until
thank you, Jen.
The 2007-2008 global recession, when people started to turn back to questions of Marxism, I think, that I really, really kind of started to clue in that, no, wait a minute, this is super important. We have to take this seriously. And in fact, at that time, I was asked to speak on an article I'd written in 1999, I think, about overcoming dual systems theory. And the reception, and I certainly used Lisa's book at that talk, and the reception I had was, I was so surprised. This was at a conference in Chicago, and it was, people were so animated and so happy to hear that there might be some kind of materialist, sensible, logical, coherent position that underwrites socialist feminism. And so since that time, I've been very keen to both promote Lisa's work, and also to build on it in my own ways under but my own kind of attempt to kind of carry that into a broad understanding of social reproduction itself is not simply based in the household. So just very briefly, I'll say a couple things more.
No
about
one should
what
be
the book
blocking
actually
Beth. In
does.
fact,
And
no one should be blocking
I was
anyone.
going for this talk, I was
Putting
looking
in a
through
timeout is one thing, but
copy, but I don't have. I'm at a hotel right now. I don't have it with me, but it's a very battered old copy
I'm the only one that
with
should be
lots
blocking
of
people.
scoring and everything. And I just picked up on one line that she wrote, that one of many that I could be quoting here, but it was something that really stuck out to me in the 1990s when I read it, and still does now. She says, and it's really about her critique
That's
of
not the
Engels, which I
argument
think
being
is
made.
where
They
a
think they're
lot
like
of the
little adults, like
theoretical
Scientologists.
richness comes from. She says, contrary to a common misinterpretation, Engels does not assert that the sex struggle antedates class conflict. Neither, however, does he clearly argue that it is rooted in the emergence of class society. He simply treats the two developments as parallel, skirting the difficult problems of historical origins and theoretical relationships. And it is precisely that last line of identifying that there are historical origins of that have to be understood and figured out and empirically investigated, as well as a theoretical relationship that has not been fully articulated. That this is what Lisa takes on with her very incisive critique that places the social reproduction of labor power at the heart of the system of capitalist
That's abolish the family.
She shows very compellingly that this is one system.
The social
not two,
reproduction of
with a
labor power is
contradictory
abolish the
relationship,
family.
that she explains by way of the capitalist tendency to undermine life making, despite its capital's absolute reliance on life making for labor power, to make labor power available. So Lisa does indeed, quote, bridge the gap between these two systems. She brings patriarchy and exploitative wage labor relations together as distinguishable streams within the same capitalist river. So she doesn't merge them completely. They're still you have to understand them as distinct things, yet they are part and parcel of the same overall system. So I think what she does actually is reorient, or at least what she did for me was reorient the socialist feminist question even, rather than trying to theorize the relation of capitalism to patriarchy by identifying its origins or its expression in something like male power, housework, sex, biology, whatever we want to say it. She asks a different question. She asks, what is it about capitalism's existential dynamics that makes patriarchal relations possible and necessary? And she finds that answer, of course, in
Patriarchal
relations
for is
the one
reproduction of the
commodity, labor
biological
power,
family.
that not only it cannot produce, but whose costs of production cut into its profits. And that redirection of the question, I think, is really generative. It moves us beyond hypostasizing women's oppression in any particular form of work, as housework or sex work or whatever, and beyond a biological explanation. And it focuses instead on the logic and the dynamics of capitalist class society. It inspires us to do the empirical investigation into the historical and culturally specific forms of women's oppression, and it relates these and other oppressions, and it relates these dynamics to the dynamics of capitalist accumulation. And it illustrates how violence and oppression are existential features of capitalism, which is something that I think is incredibly important. That is important for even thinking about racial capitalism, of course, as well.
They use capitalism to blame
so not
it
just
on all society's
any
problems.
Form of violence that cheapens and degrades and dehumanizes
Patriarchy and oppression are key signs of capitalism.
And this, in turn, and this is also incredibly important, illuminates a basis for solidarity between those who struggle to improve the conditions of our life making and those who struggle for higher wages and better conditions at waged work, which is, of course, exactly the point of the Feminism for the 99%, the manifesto that Cinzia Aruzzo was one of the co-authors of. And in showing us how and why anti-oppression politics is, in fact, a class politics, it reminds socialists that it's through expanding and enriching our powers of life-making that we can find ways to resist capitalism's dehumanizing tendencies. So, I mean, there's so much more we could say about it, but I'm going to leave it at that, except for one final point. I just want to emphasize that, you know, the degree to which this book has provided the theoretical scaffolding for so many exciting new research paths, and Kristen actually identified a lot of them too. But in my own personal experience in the last couple of years, I've been privy to students' works on things that are like the analyses of childbirth, a Spanish agrarian policy and rural depopulation, Hungarian Roma migration, work on girls' nighttime leisure. It's such a broad range of things that are drawing really fruitfully on Lisa's book. And I think more importantly still, Lisa's book has actually helped to reinvigorate a more militant and inclusive anti-capitalist feminist movement on the ground in various struggles, not limited to, but beginning with some of the women's marches and of course the or the pro-abortion rights work, especially in Argentina and Chile and stuff. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Well, hello everyone. Thanks to Red May for the invitation. It's really a pleasure for me to share this panel on Vogel's book with Susan, Kristen, and Melda. Okay, in their introduction to the historical materialism edition of Vogel's book, Sue Ferguson and David McNally argue that Marxism and the Oppression of Women, originally published in 1983, was in a sense a book out of time because it appeared at the time of acute disorganization of the socialist feminist movement that had shaped the book's own terms of reference. In this presentation, I will briefly argue why, 40 years later, Vogel's book is a book at the right time. And by the right time, I mean theoretically and politically on time. To do so, I will take what I consider to be theoretical innovations put forward by Liz Vogel in her book, which set the basis for socio-reproduction theory to be an expansive analytical approach today. In this sense, I will argue why, as Vogel herself said a few years ago, socio-reproduction theory is a 21st century analytical framework developed from her 20th century work. Firstly, because Vogel's theoretical innovations in the book enables us to understand and explain processes that are at the heart of the new feminist wave. In particular, the importance of the work women do in the rise and massification of the current women's movement, particularly in Latin America and the Global South. As you know, this importance is expressed, among other ways, through the fact that the International Women's Strike is the political event that articulates the movement at the international level. That moment of the strike marks the shift from women as victims of gender violence, of femicide, to women as dangerous subjects, as subjects that threaten. What is this threat based on? It is based on our capacity to work, our capacity to produce, our labor power. If women stop, the world stops. So if our lives
they're commenting on a book that's 40 years old. That's what it is. The book is 40.
That spread around the world.
They really badly named the title of the presentation. It is the feminist movement itself
the book is that places at the center of the debate the problem of the work women do. What does our work produce? What is the importance of our work in the capitalist societies in which we live? These questions are a terrain of dispute within the feminist movement.
They're implying that women are only responsible for care work, unpaid labor.
Such as the care work approach or the sustainability of life approach, which are part of the very rich debate in feminism today. I do believe that Vogel's answer to these questions let us take these ideas of care work or sustainability of life and make them more precise and sharper. Vogel's conceptual shift from debate on domestic work to the debate on the reproduction of labor power is fundamental nowadays.
No,
because
that's not
it
what's
enables
happening.
us
That's
to
really
establish the
dismissive and not
relationship
helpful.
between this care or
Not what's
life-making
happening.
work and capital. It enables us to say, okay, we do carry out domestic work, we do carry out care work, we do carry out
Domestic work,
life-making work.
care-
All of this is
life-making
true.
work,
But
reproduction,
the problem is
abolish
not
the
these
family.
works in themselves, but the relationship between these works and the way in which profits are produced and capital is accumulated. That is to say, to exploitation of labor power.
Autumn, George lives in
Understanding
Brazil.
the specific link between
lives
the work
there.
women do and exploitation was fundamental 40 years ago. And I would argue it is even more fundamental today because capital continues to beat at the rhythm of exploitation of labor power, but the forms of this exploitation have expanded and become more complex. The notion of social reproduction allows us to understand that the specific position of women in capitalist societies does not lie
Sophie's in the
in
chat.
merely being
Sophie's in the chat
responsible for the
commenting on me.
reproduction of labor power. Our specific position lies in being situated at the plexus of the contradictory relationship between production and reproduction. This location, which I call an amphibious location, and which enables us to think of women as a bridge between production and reproduction, allows us to understand a number of central elements of the current state of affairs. First, that an international women's strike is therefore not a strike of the kitchens, but a strike of kitchens, hospitals, schools, care
Sophie is
homes, as
accusing
well
me
as
of trolling.
factories, transport, trade, etc. This crisis of social reproduction that is part
And I
of the
have read
current
your work,
capitalist
Sophie.
crisis involves all this interconnected space of work because all of them are the ground where reproduction of labor power and life take place. The homes and the communities of the working class beset by the poverty of resources and time. The institutions of social reproduction beset by fiscal adjustment and privatization. And the point of production beset by the precarization of labor. The crisis of social reproduction that is at the heart of the new
Sophie thinks I
feminist
haven't
wave
read her work.
takes
Please,
place in these
Sophie.
interconnected spheres. Secondly, the notion of social reproduction as a concept that links productive and reproductive spheres enables us to avoid the romanticization of care work, which is a danger that appears in our movement. From Vogel's point of view, social reproduction work emerges in all its contradictions. On the one hand, it is without any doubt the possibility of establishing effective and loving bonds that allow us to develop our subjective capacities. But on the other hand, this possibility is cut off and amputated by the material conditions in which we carry out this work, not only poverty of economic resources, particularly in peripheral countries like Argentina, but also poverty of time that mainly affects women.
Sophie and I have made contact.
And by the
This is
subjective
great.
conditions, the type of subjectivity that we shape, a subjectivity that is disciplined to be able to sell its labor power on the market. So there's no possibility of conceiving the space of care, families or communities, as a heaven in a heartless world, or as places free of capital. They are contradictory places, indirectly signed by capital rules. Third, there is an issue that I'm particularly interested in highlighting. Vogel's idea of working class women at the plexus of the contradictory relationship between production and reproduction enables us to think
It's
in
someone who
terms
believes
of
in
power.
no government and private
I
property.
would like to make a point here. We need to rethink working class power resources. As we know, the question of the resources of workers' powers is a classic one within Marxism and also in labor sociology. So is the distinction elaborated by Ellicott and Wright by Beverly Silver between structural power derived from the position of workers in the economic system, which opens up the possibility of interrupting or restricting the accumulation of capital, and associative power derived from the unity of workers and the building of workers' organizations, whether they are unions or political parties. The point I want to make here is the need to incorporate a third category into the analysis, the socio-reproductive position as a specific and differentiated source of power of the working class. By socio-reproductive position, I mean the location of wage workers, mainly women, who perform tasks in the formal system of socio-reproduction, whether public or private,
Social
health,
reproduction is the
education,
creation of the
care.
biological
This
family.
location
That's what they
implies a
mean every time
specific
they say
source of
social
power
reproduction.
that stems
Biological
from the
family.
possibility of directly affecting the reproduction of life. In contrast to what happens with structural power, these workers do not hold strategic position in the economic productive system as might be sought, for example, for sectors such as logistics or some industries. But they do hold strategic position in ensuring the condition of possibility of this economic productive system, the existence of labor power, available to go to work. Affecting the reproduction of labor power and life usually has indirect impacts on the accumulation of capital, but direct impacts on working class families and through them on the community as a whole. Moreover, a further important element to take into account when thinking about the power of socio-reproduction wage workers is the impossibility of the localization of these type of institutions. A hospital or a school cannot be delocalized because they are institutions whose purpose, the reproduction of labor power and life, is tied to their territorial implantation, where the population lives. Finally, there is an extremely important peculiarity of this workers' position. The institutions in which this work is carried out combine in time and space, due to the very nature of the work of reproducing life, the needs of workers as wage earners with the needs of workers as part of the working class as a whole, not only its wage earning fraction. The institutions of social reproduction are amphibious territories and thus potential nodes of articulation of production and reproduction struggles. And this can be highly explosive because it opens up the possibility of a counter.
What she's talking about, if you can't follow her, if you're having trouble understanding her, is she's essentially what they say social reproduction is having kids, okay? And they're saying when you're socially reproducing, you're creating labor that is like valuable within the system of capitalism. So they think that having kids, because kids are considered private property, and they also think kids can be exploited for the creation of value within the capitalist system. That's what they're talking about. I hope that that's clear to people.
Of this social reproductive power became evident in diverse recent strikes, such as the Teachers' Spring in the United States, the strike of care workers in the Basque Country in 2016 and 17, or in the health strike called the Elephant Struggle in Neuquén, Patagonia, Argentina in 2021. It is clear that the achievement of this articulation is not settled in the field of the source of power, but in the political strategies of trade unions and also feminist organizations, and in the possibility of understanding that the right to settle the conditions of our own socio-reproduction is a demand that intersects different sectors of the working class with its huge racial, sexual, gender, migratory origin, community belonging, and capacity heterogeneity. Vogel's originality in situating the specificity of women's location at the plexus of the contradictory relationship between production of value and reproduction of labor power and life also makes it possible to reflect on social reproduction struggles as a space of articulation between the powerful women's movement, other social movements, and the labor movement, a space where we could democratically debate our right as working class people to settle the conditions of our social reproduction, a strategic dispute that has women workers at its heart. All these profoundly contemporary and urgent issues could not be thought of, at least not in this way, without
I know
Liz Vogel's
I'm
book.
engaging in patriarchy
That is why
right now.
I consider
It's
Marxism and the oppression of women,
Thank you,
40
Jen.
years after it was written, to be a book on time. And that is something to celebrate. Thank you.
I want to hear from this redheaded woman. She's going to be spicy. Oh, look at those glasses.
Hello to everyone.
Red
It's a
from
great
head to
honor
toe.
for me to be on this panel with Kristen, Sue, and Paula. Many thanks for that. I want to emphasize one more time the fact that Liz Vogel is one of the most influential Marxist theoreticians of socialist feminists. She is
Because
also
they
very
want all
important for
children
us.
born via surrogacy. They want all children born via surrogacy. That's why.
Major book, the subject of this panel, Marxism and the Oppression of Women, is also present in our language. It was published in 2015. Vogel explores the material basis of the oppression of women, and she explained it in terms of social reproduction, as you know. As mentioned before, she advocates a Marxist approach for the analysis of it. For this, she proposes a return to Marx and Engels. This return includes their early writings, such as the Paris manuscripts or the work we know as the German ideology. According to Vogel, the German ideology was a turning point in Marx and Engels' work, and it is an essential contribution to the social reproduction theory. As you know, socialist feminists in general accept this. Here, in this work, Marx and Engels developed the idea of an integrated social unity. I think we can say that social reproduction theory is strongly inspired by this vision. Now, I would like to say a few words about the German ideology in this context. As Vogel and many Marxist scholars point out, Marx and Engels developed the materialist conception of history in the German ideology. According to this understanding, reality or the real world determines or conditions the social, political, and intellectual processes. Let me explain this
They're not
briefly.
in favor of women. They want to
People
abolish all gender.
collaborate to
They want to get
provide
rid of the
for
gender
their
binary
needs,
entirely.
and the forms of this collaboration determine the general framework within which all human activities take place. So, the German ideology is methodologically very important. We also know that Marx mentioned the German ideology as an essential work in his introduction to a contribution to the critique of political economy. He says that he has arrived at an essential conclusion, a guiding principle in that work for his lifelong studies. And moreover, in this work, Marx and Engels also explore several aspects of family relations, ideology, and social reproduction. In her book, Vogel appreciates this. Here, I want to emphasize three notions or three critical conceptions from the German ideology. I think these notions are crucial for the social reproduction theory. First, the unity of production and reproduction. Second, the centrality of human labor or activity. And third, the concept of intercourse or relation. Marx and Engels used the German word Verkehr for this.
The concept of intercourse or relation. We're about to enter Demolition Man, guys.
And reproduction. There is a very well-known paragraph quoted by many socialist feminist scholars. I want to read a part of it. Here they say, people who daily recreate their own life begin to make other people, to propagate their kind, the relation between men and women, parents and children, the family. This notion suggests an integrated conception of life and history. Vogel says it seems to place the problem of women's oppression in the context of social reproduction. It emphasizes the material essence of women's labor processes. Let me mention the second notion. I think this one is central to the materialist conception of history. The argument proceeds like this. First, people produce their lives through their practical activities. Secondly, an individual is the product of her own labor. And hence, thirdly, her labor transforms both the external world and the individual herself. So, labor and practical activity are at the center. Now, it is well known that the roots of Marx and Engels' materialist understanding go back to their earlier writings. For example, in the manuscript of 1844, Marx posits that the entire so-called world story is nothing but the creation of people through human labor. In his 11th thesis on Feuerbach, Marx posits the notion of activity in the sense of practical activity and work. In the 8th thesis, for example, he says that all social life is essentially practical. This emphasis on labor and practical activity logically provides the ground for the first notion. I mean the one which is about the unity of production and reproduction. Social reproduction theoreticians begin from here, and they broaden the definition of labor as the production of people, life, and labor itself. The third notion is closely related to the previous two. Marx and Engels posit that there is no labor process, no production of life without a form of social interaction. People realize their production processes through intercourse with each other and under a specific division of labor. We found ourselves in already existing social and labor relations, and we also form new relations and new interactions through our activities. These relations and intercourses determine our production and reproduction processes, and also us. Here, in this context, Marx and Engels used the German word Verkehr. Verkehr or Verkehren in verb form has many meanings in German, such as commerce, traffic, and so on. But it, first of all, means intercourse in general. It seems that Marx and Engels used this term only in the German ideology, but in that work, Verkehr is a central notion. Marx and Engels use the term in a very broad meaning. Verkehr covers many types of intercourses, including commercial and productive intercourses, but also,
Jen,
more importantly, emotional and familial intercourses. As we know, the social reproduction approach also refers to a broad understanding of human relations. This provides us the ways to explain women's labor activities based on established form of relationships, such as capitalism or male domination. Moreover, it opens the way to discuss many social norms, such as motherhood, family, and love, on the ground of labor relations. And on this basis, that discussion can also be extended to capital and male domination. Well, what can we say in conclusion? Let me first recall these three notions. First, the unity of production and reproduction. Second, human being as the product of their labor, their practical activities. And third, a broad understanding of human interactions, that is, Verkehr. When we consider these three notions together, I think we can say the following. On the one hand, women produce and reproduce people, life, labor power, and hence capitalism.
Women reproduce labor
power. On the other, they produce and reproduce themselves as women, as the second sex. Women perform these labor activities within established unequal relations, such as the capitalist relations of production, the gender division of labor, and familial ties. These unequal relations impose reproduction and care work on their shoulders. This so-called
forced labor to do care work. This is abolish the family.
Women from developing their human potential. They prevent women's
the biological family prevents women from fulfilling their full potential,
such as education, such as science, or philosophy, or politics, or employment in general. This enables men to maintain their domination over women. It means that women reproduce not only labor power and capitalism, but also gender inequality.
I'm going to ask Sophie a question. Oh, shit. I didn't mean to do that.
And therefore, the oppression of women is not merely an ideological or cultural problem. On the contrary, it has a material basis. It is based on capitalist and gendered labor relations in which women find and reproduce themselves. I would like to add one more thing as a last sentence. These labor conditions also provide us women the means to fight against capitalism and male domination, and therefore open the way for our emancipation. Thank you very much.
All right. Hopefully we'll get into a discussion now. This is always the best part, the discussion and the Q&A. Maybe they will even answer our questions. That'd be pretty great.
All right. I think our moderator is not here. So I will thank everyone so much for these really generative and, helpful comments about Marxism and the oppression of women and how, this book has been important for movements as well as academic work. So, I think the suggestion from the moderator is, does anyone want to, maybe he'll come back and do it.
Oh, hey, no, I'm happy to leave it all to you. I was just going to say, I think now might be a time if you all have questions for each other as panelists or things that you wanted to comment on or talk about. Now's the time. I would just say go for that, and then
sometimes Kyle
if there's
moderates.
time left over, we can take some audience questions if you all are open to that. But that's up to you.
Yes, Sophie does not like me, Reagan. She knows who I am. She's identified the problem.
Well, if I can just say one thing that listening to Melda was reminding me of something that again, it's less a question, I guess, and more just a comment. But I think
that's a good
one
question,
of the
Tom
things
J.
about this book that is so
Tom J, you should go ask this in their chat.
Important to draw out is precisely the fact that what Lisa's doing here
Someone
is
please go ask this in their chat. That's not me. Very nicely.
Marxist
not
historical
shitposting,
materialist
nicely.
methodology, and so it's not.
It was inevitable that Sophie was going to figure out who I was.
She's really being more Marxist than Marx himself was in some ways, and I that's quite a feat to begin with. But she takes what he says in capital too. Definitely German ideology has been important, but in capital to really investigates and historicizes the production of labor power, which is something that he just never got around to. And I think that's also a very important thing to acknowledge.
Look, we're getting into, oh no, that's Sean.
I think it's also helps to show then the power of that framework overall. But it doesn't do so. It doesn't use Marx in a way that's just using him like this dogma that gets applied to something he didn't talk about. It's actually reinventing Marx by using Marx. And I think that's really, really important. But
thank you, Nick. None of them want to talk today. I can't imagine why.
Questions for co-panelists?
Everyone's tired. It's a lazy Sunday.
To say to each other or say about the book?
No, I have a good news for the audience that we are finishing the translation into Spanish of Vogel's book. So this year, in a moment of this year, I don't know when, but there's going to be able.
Not Trump, Autumn. Not Trump. Trump is a centrist.
Chile,
not Trump.
Spain. So we are very happy.
On the right, you do have the white positivity movement. They're really bad. They're really fucking toxic. I've not dug into them specifically.
Tell them the
white well-being movement. You'll have that. You'll have alt-right crazy
and Paula, you're writing an introduction to that.
But not Trump.
Right? Yes. I'm writing introduction. It's a honor for me, of course.
And I believe a new French translation has just come out or is about to just come out, with more translations planned. Oh, and in the chat, it says one has just come out in Portuguese as well. So I think these translations are a really exciting way that more people can gain access to this on a kind of international scale and kind of begin building on the work and applying it to different contexts.
Yeah, that you mentioning France or French reminded me too that I've recently been in touch with somebody from the Sorbonne who is organizing a conference on social reproduction there next summer. But what she mentioned to me, which I found was pretty interesting, because of course in the French context, social reproduction has been largely kind of Bourdieusian social reproduction and Althusser, and and it was very interesting just my exchange with her, because she was sort of saying there's kind of a breakthrough now of this of a Vogelian social reproduction approach, which is I think it's just so clear how having something that so coherently.
Trump doesn't care if people are trans. Trump doesn't want people who are trans
what's at
serving in
stake
the military
and the
when
logic
they should be
of
getting,
reproduction capitalism.
psychological treatment. It's actually not an unreasonable request.
It can cut through a lot of people's confusion around that concept, because the concept is very, very broadly applied and can mean different things to different people, just like intersectionality feminism came to be kind of a messy concept in some ways. I think social reproduction, there's a danger of that happening too, and so it's anyway.
There's a question in the chat. If the panelists need something to talk about, there's a question in the chat. I want them to comment on Sophie Lewis's work on Abolish the Family and how it relates to the topic.
So
question
we have
a
couple
Kyle.
questions in the chat. I can sort of read a few of them out, and then you all can choose to answer them or not. Totally up to you. But one that we had that came in was about the relationship between Sophie Lewis's work in her book Abolishing the Family, and maybe
Kyle.
her work just more broadly in its relationship to
Thank
Lisa
you.
Vogel's book Marxism and the Oppression of Women. There was another question that came in that was about recent Marxist scholars working on social reproduction have signaled the limitations of a so-called world-making ontology of labor developed in recent developments of social reproduction theory and its difficulties to deal with value relations. So those are just a couple that I'm seeing. I think there are some more coming in. But if any of that, if you all want to say anything about those things,
come on, ladies. Now's your chance.
If you're feeling like
I'm especially interested in what Kristen has
we can
to
also
say.
wrap it up whenever you all are feeling ready to do that.
Come on, you guys can do it. I believe in you.
I see a question that I wanted to answer, which is about aspects of the book that's been underemphasized.
Ignoring the fucking question, of course.
I kind of tried to point to this in my remarks, but I really feel like the political economy is something that's been underemphasized, and that I think it would be a fantastic place for people to do more work, because I think of all the Marxist feminist work of this era, I think the most careful political economy is taking place in this book. And I think that if we can, and maybe I'm biased being an economist, but I think that some careful political economy will really help us understand better, what kind of paths forward to collective liberation might be fruitful and what other ones might be blocked. Or maybe less productive. And so I think I think this is a place where I think more people need to be looking, is in the political economy chapters of this book and building on those. I'd love to see more of that.
I can say a little bit about the relationship to Sophie Lewis's work. Only I'm thinking, and I wish I had my copy here with me. I don't, because the very last line of Vogel's book is about the withering away of the family. And I don't know, Kristen, you might be able to read it. Yeah. But I think because she's historicizing the forms of women's oppression, and so the family, the private family household is a dominant form, albeit, but it is just a form of social reproduction. There are other forms, and that the key issue is, as Paula was pointing out, it's really the contradiction between how we reproduce labor power and the how capital relies on that, the undermining of that reproduction for producing profit, that because that's kind of the linchpin and the key to sustaining and reproducing oppression. The family itself is not the sort of the key institution that is reproducing the oppression. But that doesn't mean that, but she was able to see that if you can change the relations of labor and the way in which labor is organized by overcoming capitalism, you can overcome those historic forms of social reproduction too. So you can overcome it, and there will be different forms of family, or non-family, or kinship, or whatever, as Sophie Lewis talks about. And I find
if you can overcome
Sophie
capitalism,
work,
you can overcome
I don't always agree with the steps that she's taking to get to her conclusions, and I find that she tends to kind of treat the family as if the family is the issue, as opposed to capitalism. But that's the problem. But I do think that vision of a society in which people care for each other, in which caring and reproduction of ourselves and our worlds is enriched by different types of relationships, is a very, very important vision that we should keep. And I don't think it's contradicts anything that is in Marxism and the oppression of women.
Thank you, Sue, for that answer.
Should we have the last line of it? It's two sentences that I think go together. It says, the proper management of domestic labor and women's work during the transition to communism is therefore a critical problem for socialist society, for only on this basis can the economic, political, and ideological conditions for women's true liberation be established and maintained. In the process, the family, in its particular historical form as a kin-based social unit, for the reproduction of exploitable labor power and class society, will also wither away, and with it both patriarchal family relations and the oppression of women.
Abolish the family. That was abolish the family. The family as a kin-based social unit will wither away when capitalism is overthrown. That's what she just said. That's in the book they're talking about right now. That is abolish the family. They think that if they can overcome capitalism, the biological family will just disappear in favor of other forms of community or family,
right.
or like
thanks for reading that.
Kin biological relations that will no longer be the thing that holds people together.
So there are a few more questions. Some of them have to do with regarding social reproduction in queer circles. Someone would love to read more. If there's any reading suggestions around work that have talked on that might be useful.
I have another
there's
question.
also some questions around technology, or whether we think there are certain technological changes that might come in the future, whether that has to do with AI or just broadly speaking around the reproduction of social life and women's roles in that. But those are a couple more that I'm seeing come in.
So I can really briefly, a couple just hot off the press from Pluto is a book by M.E. O'Brien called
M.E. O'Brien is one of Sophie's best friends.
Queer,
another abolish the family person.
And social reproduction, called Family Abolition, Capitalism and Communizing of and the Communizing of Care. And that addresses some of the queer Marxism perspective, and then also again, Pluto, has a book by Jules Joanne Gleason called Transgender Marxism, which is
Queer
also
Marxism.
really that's a collection of essays, and there's some interesting stuff there on
Transgender Marxism
queer
argues that
social
we should
reproduction as
basically
well,
all be
including a really good
non-binary
essay by
for the abolition of the gender binary.
Cade Doyle Griffiths. So
We've seen Cade
I
on
would
this channel.
recommend those.
Cade is a whole other character. Sue knows everyone that we know. Isn't this
And
exciting?
maybe,
Sue and I
I
should
don't want
be
to
best
mispronounce
friends.
the person's name, but Alan Sears is is maybe another one.
Makes me feel like I've done a good job in exploring the
to
world
look
of the
at.
socialist.
Or even, Michelle Barrett and Mary, oh gosh,
McIntosh.
Yeah. Sorry. Their book about the family is, could be another place to look for some of that.
Great, thanks. There's one more that's come in just about relating to a debate in Brazil, although I think this probably extends beyond Brazil as well, around whether the insistence on women as a category is transphobic or trans excludent, and how that might be dealt with in some of these conversations regarding
The
the
insistence
family or
of women
social
as a
reproduction.
category is transphobic was the question.
I think it can be hard to answer in a sort of broad category rather than fixed on any specific type of argument, but I wanted to note that as well.
I mean, I can answer really quickly that in my own work, I've removed gender entirely for trying to understand the
There it
reproduction of
is.
labor power. And I think in my
Trans
remarks, when I was
Marxist,
talking
queer
about
Marxist,
where we can go from here
University
by
of Texas
integrating
professor.
current feminist theory, that I think thinking beyond the bourgeois family household of this man, woman, kids, nuclear family that actually doesn't exist in the majority of households is, I think, a direction that we can take future theorizing. But thinking about the oppression of women as not being rooted in a biological category of women, which this book does. And I think most of the excellent work happening is not thinking about women as a biological category, or fertility and childbearing as kind of the source of oppression. I think helps address some of
Fertility
that.
and childbearing are a source of oppression, according to
I don't
a
know if anyone else
University
has
of Texas
anything
professor.
to add.
Thank you, Kristen. That was very insightful. That you think fertility and childbearing is oppressive to women.
I would only say I agree with that, and I think that's the key point is who is social doing the social reproductive work, and that's all of us to some and queer people socially reproduce themselves, and trans people socially reproduce themselves, and in fact
they reproduce your kids too. They appropriate your kids in
of
school
people who are
and queer them
marginalized
as
and
well.
whose social reproduction is so difficult is incredibly valuable to enriching the theory of social reproduction, because it highlights the various historically, culturally, socially specific factors at play in how capitalism is or is not creating some bodies that are more valued than others, and how they are degrading, and how the degradation and dehumanization of particular types of people is part and parcel of the attempt to kind of degrade and devalue and keep social reproductive work, or sorry, the whole costs and conditions under which we socially reproduce ourselves, to try and depress those as much as possible.
Tell that to the parents I know who have had their kids trained to believe that they were something they were not. Autumn, conversion therapy happens in schools every single day.
All right.
Tell
well, I
that to all the
think,
detransitioners, Autumn.
do we feel like we're ready to wrap up? Do we want to take some more questions? How are we feeling?
Let's do some more questions. I would like to know what they think of queer Marxism.
I think this is a very shy group.
Why don't you want to tell us about your work?
I'm joined by so many shy people on a panel, let alone one about Marxist feminism.
But why don't you want to tell us about your work?
Anyone else? You would think everyone on this panel is Canadian and shy.
Okay, great. Well, then we can go ahead and wrap up here. Thank you all again for joining us, both our wonderful panelists.
Thank you, Kyle,
and all of our audience members.
You're welcome for giving you a bigger audience than you would have had on your own.
I just want to remind you all that our event later today, Capitalist Zone Defense, has to be rescheduled and is postponed for now. So that will not be happening later this afternoon.
Exactly,
however,
Kurt.
we do have this Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific time, we have the legal crisis in Chile. And then this Thursday and Friday, we have some in-person events in Seattle. On Thursday at 6 p.m., the University Bookstore will be with Cedric Johnson talking about his new book, After Black Lives Matter. And then Friday at 5 p.m. at Vermilion in Seattle, we will be talking about pro sports, urban politics,
we do have spies
and the left,
in Seattle, Red May.
with Jules Boykoff, Cedric Johnson, and
Don't worry,
Jesse
not
Agopian.
me.
One last time, if you like what we do and can support us so that we continue doing this year after year, please go ahead and become a patron for us at our Patreon page. We also will have an updated list of
Tell
our
it to the
schedule for the rest of
detransitioners,
May,
Autumn, who have
available
cut
on
off
our
perfectly
website
good
at
body parts
redmayseattle.com.
and mutilated their body for the rest of their lives
very much,
because they were convinced to in school.
Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.
All right, guys, that wraps
Thank you
up
so much.
Red May for today. That was a very illuminating workshop, maybe a little dry, maybe a little quiet at some points. They didn't really want to talk about why they all believe in abolishing the biological family all that much, but we did get them on a couple things, and I'm really happy about that. We got a couple things where they were talking about how the biological family is oppressive to women. They got a couple of things about basically how biology in general is oppressive to women. So that's really great. I'm gonna have to go through that stream again and clip out some good bits for us to share with others. But guys, Red May, sadly, is fastly coming to a close. They are going to be doing a couple more streams that we might partake of. Let me just show you what they have coming up on their schedule, because we are taking advantage of all of the extra socialism content that Red May wants to provide us with. I think I would like to watch this How Not to Talk About Class one. I think that's happening next Saturday. That's the 27th, right? Hang on. Let me look at a calendar real quick so I actually know what date I'm talking about. Yes, that is going to be next Saturday at 2 p.m. So we'll probably do that one. I think that would be something that we could all benefit from. Let's see. I don't really care about Bolivia, so we'll probably skip that one. Money and Capital in the 21st Century. That's next Sunday. That'll be great. And then, of course, Late Fascism. That'll have to be, I think that's on a Tuesday. Am I right? That's a Tuesday special at 2 p.m. So we still got a couple more Red May streams to go. Thank you guys for joining me and watching Real Socialists in Action. We also do this every Saturday at 6 p.m. for Socialism Saturday. If you missed last night's Socialism Saturday, it was honestly one of the best Socialism Saturdays we've ever done. So I would definitely recommend going back and watching the stream for that. We learned all about being the best comrade that we can be, and it was actually very insightful into the socialist mindset. And so I definitely recommend going and catching the replay on that one, because you will learn a lot about what the socialists actually believe. As a reminder, we do have movie night later in my supporter Discord at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We are watching THX 1138. I have never seen it before. I am sure some of you have never seen it before as well. This is George Lucas's first film. It is about a dystopian, genderless society. So exactly what the socialists want. It's going to be great. How do you get access to the supporter Discord, you ask? Well, I'm glad that you did. Number one, you can become a member of this here YouTube channel. I will be posting a link in about an hour or two to the supporter Discord for all channel members on YouTube. If you are a supporter in my locals community, I will be posting a link to the supporter Discord for paying members in a couple of hours. If you are a supporter in my Patreon, same thing. I will be posting a link to all members in a couple hours. And if you are a paid supporter on my Substack, which is carlin.substack.com, I will be sending out an email that looks like this. It's called the Unwoke Roundup. It is the weekly newsletter with all the content that I've created for you over the week, so you can kind of catch up if you miss something. But this newsletter is very important because in this newsletter, all the way down at the bottom, because we have to keep it behind the paywall, are your supporter perks. So when you get this newsletter, if you are a paid supporter on my Substack, you will be able to get access to the 2 Zoom calls that we do every single week. They are private, they are unrecorded. You'll get the links for those. You will also get the link to the supporter Discord, so you can come in and join us for movie night. We do movie night every Sunday at 8 p.m. And we do trivia. We talk about the movie. It is a really fun time, just nice kind of like way to kick back and relax at the end of the week. So I do hope you guys will join us for that, and that'll be really great. If you missed it on my supporter Discord, last night I did post a clip of me responding to the stream that Tim Pool did with that guy from the Surfs, essentially explaining to Tim what he does not understand about the woke left. Either Tim doesn't understand it, or he does understand it and he refuses to articulate it to his audience. Either way, I don't really care. But if you want to understand why the woke left does what it does, check out the clip I posted on the Substack last night. It is also posted on this here YouTube channel. It's about 7 minutes long of me explicitly explaining why the woke left does what it does. Why do they always veer towards chaos? Why does it always seem like they're taking advantage of crisis rather than actually trying to solve the problem? I explained it explicitly in this clip. Please share it. It is one of the most important things I put on the channel lately. If you want to know why the woke left does what it does, that is going to be your key to the kingdom there. Let's see. That's all I've got for right now, guys. So I will see you guys for movie night at 8 p.m. Do I give out free memberships? Well, I did give out a free membership a couple weeks ago, Autumn, but you weren't paying attention. But you know what? It's not very capitalist of me to give out free memberships. We're talking about $5 here, Autumn. I'm sure you go to Starbucks and you spend more than $5 on a cup of coffee. So, if you want to come and join us for movie night, you can find the $5. Go dig around the couch cushions. I'm sure it can come up. But I do occasionally give out free memberships and chances to win and stuff like that. But how do I know that you can't afford it, Autumn? See, Sam is a socialist. I am not a socialist. I am a capitalist. And so how do I know? How do I know that you aren't just, looking for that $5 to go right down to Starbucks to get a cup of coffee? How do I really know? We engage in capitalism here. We do not engage in the dictatorship of the proletariat or anything like that. And I provide a lot of free content, which I'm of course happy to do. But if you want into my Discord, you can pony up the $5. That's all I'm saying. All right, guys, that's all I have for right now. I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another stream. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I will see some of you for movie night later. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Bye.